it is time once again for another AEW Dynamite review here on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Hi there, I'm Warren. Second time of 2026 that we are going to be breaking down AEW Dynamite back on our usual Thursday schedule. The holidays are done. We're all back. Now there's no more excuse. Now there's no more excuse for Warren to be slacking off, you know, coming up with excuses. Oh, I want to be with my family and all this bullshit. No. Like now, moving forward, we're back to the grind. Now you can fully expect and complain, you know, when Warren doesn't deliver stuff. Now you can absolutely go back and do that. It's warranted. See, the good thing is that when you do something that's warranted, you can't have warranted without Warren. See, I'm not exactly sure what that means. I don't even know necessarily why I brought it up. Maybe it's because I'm in a good mood. I'm in a good mood because once again this week we had a terrific Dynamite. We something that just had lots of stuff that really clicked. A truly excellent first hour of pro wrestling. When the year is kicking off so strong, you know, with it, you know, we had it was ending last year with the, you know, but I did the review in the new year, so bear with me here. But you know, we had an all-time great Dynamite last week. We had a terrific, a really great Dynamite this week. I mean, I'm feeling optimistic, always cautiously optimistic, but optimistic nonetheless. That at the very least we're starting off on the right foot. And you know, I am hoping that this is going to be the mark of really good things to come. But look, nonetheless, I'm excited to break down this Dynamite because I think there's a lot of really good stuff. And not that it's above criticism. There are some things that did kind of irk me, that got a little to me, and I'll cover those. We'll talk about them, of course. This is par for the course, right? But let's start by talking about the business aspect of it. 2,951 tickets distributed for this Dynamite here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, over at the Bach Center. It's a little bit of a dip from the last time the Dynamite was here, which was in February 2024, where they had 3,274 tickets distributed. I've been pointing out recently that Dynamite, or at least AEW, their ticket sales had been on a bit of an uptick in the sense that they had kind of broke the pattern of week after week showing up to venues and recording less tickets distributed than the last time they were in the exact same venue, and in some occasions at the very same period of the year. So listen, even when I was talking about it, I was very cautious. I wasn't saying, oh, suddenly like, okay, this is the business turnaround that we were waiting for. You know, I was like, oh, well, I was a little cautious. I was like, well, look, it's notable to point it out, but we're not seeing like this explosion in business, right? And it's kind of the same here. I think, you know, the fluctuation is what? It's not a huge amount of tickets, but I think I think it's still a trend that we need to keep an eye on to see how things are going to go moving forward. But yeah, let's get into this Dynamite that I think, like, right now, if we can get like a third consecutive Dynamite where the standards are as high as the past two ones we've gotten, I think we can start talking about truly building momentum. And it just makes sense for AEW to sort of capitalize on the fact that there's a little disgruntlement in regards to WWE and their fan base. It would behoove them to sort of capitalize on the disgruntlement and try to put on their best foot forward, and again, do things that AEW does best to try and reconnect, not reconnect, that's the wrong one, but reignite a passion and a vested interest in the AEW product from wrestling fans. I think, what else have they got to lose than to put on great shows week after week? I know, sounds crazy, but sometimes I don't quite understand pro wrestling bookers. Look, Jim Ross returned to commentary on the show. It is tremendous that Jim Ross once again seems to be defeating every health issue that comes swinging his way, and he's coming out on top every time. I can absolutely sympathize with that, and I think that's tremendous and good for him. It's good to see him back on his feet and, back behind the booth doing the thing that he truly does love the most. That being said, did Jim Ross help elevate the show? No. It's Jim Ross in 2025, and yes, they've been pushing him as the Hall of Fame voice of professional wrestling, and this is a man whose legacy needs to be celebrated. This is a man whose contributions to professional wrestling are, of course, for a lot of us who are in the know, deeper than just commentary work. He was instrumental in many, many ways, and yes, ended up being the voice of an entire generation of professional wrestling fans, particularly right in one of the peaks of popularity in pro wrestling. So you can't sit here, I can't sit here, and I don't think you can as well, at least in a good faith way, and say that Jim Ross isn't an important part of the fabric of modern pro wrestling, I guess, if you want to extend the modern part right all the way to the 90s. But I think it's also okay and possible to say that, at the same time, Jim Ross he doesn't bring much to the table anymore. I didn't think he was particularly interesting or good. I didn't think he was particularly good, quite frankly. There were some moments I was wondering if he was listening to the product over his time away in the company. Particularly in the main event, where it felt like he was calling the match as if Swerve and Paige were the heels in the match. I don't know. Look, I think it's entirely okay to say two things. I think it's okay to say, yes, Jim Ross is legendary, and I'm appreciative and have enjoyed his contributions to wrestling and his commentary and so on and so forth. But I think it's also okay to say, at the same time, I don't think he is useful or important to the execution of a show in 2026. I think I've been saying 2025, right? Again, you're going to have to give me a little leeway on this so that my brain connects, I should say, with the fact that we've moved into a brand new year. I don't want to harp on it too much because I know it can turn into a very sensitive subject with wrestling fans. But nostalgia is a weird thing, and here's the thing that I think a lot of people should. Okay, let me say that again. Here's a very, I think, reasonable take. Okay, I don't think it's a hot take. I don't think it's a cold. I don't think it's a cold take. I think it's just very reasonable, and maybe it's a boring take, but it's my legit thoughts nonetheless. I would much prefer to remember any old timer who's in pro wrestling, whether it's commentators or wrestlers, anyone, right? Anyone who is out there to perform, to entertain, to do what they do in a pro wrestling ring, or being part of a pro wrestling show. I would much rather remember the good times and just live with the memories of the excellence of those moments, as opposed to watching these people trying, getting into the ring and being a pale copy of what they used to be. Dare I say, in some circumstances, just difficult to watch and sort of tarnishing, the vibe, the legacy, I guess, that they've created for themselves over the years, and that they have cultivated for the only reason is that they just can't let go, or they're trying to chase that dragon one last time. I don't know. And in some circumstances, look, like, in some circumstances, it's terrible, right? You can think about, let's say, Ric Flair's final match, that no one needed to see that. Or you can think about Sting's retirement tour and how excellent that was. But, it takes a little... not everyone is going to end their career on the same note, if that makes sense, because not everyone will be on the same physical, mental plane. I don't know. I'm already going too deep into this one, but I know it's a layered subject and it's not a catch-all either, but like I guess my principle in general is that I would much prefer just pulling up old clips of JR and remembering how excellent he was and how much he brought to the table and how important he was in telling a lot of stories back in the day in WWE particularly, as opposed to what he's been doing what he did on Dynamite last night. And again, it doesn't take away the idea that I'm glad the man is still around and that he's a fighter and good for him. I think it's going to be a sad day when Jim Ross sheds his mortal coil, but at the same time, I'm not particularly excited to hear him do commentary on Dynamite. Anyway, the show starts with a backstage update. They had published this on social media just before the show started, maybe a half hour or so before, and then we got to the show itself, where they decided to air the segment, kicking off the show with that, basically saying that Jet Speed, who were supposed to be in a trios match with Jack Perry, had been attacked backstage, and they wouldn't be cleared to compete on Dynamite. And then suddenly the demand appear alongside Don Callis and Renee basically accusing them of putting a bounty out on the heads of Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight, whereas Ricochet in a very heel fashion, sort of says, hey, I never said bounty in and about itself, right? Anyway, so it turns out that the guys who took out Jet Speed are Mark Davis alongside Jake something, who just suddenly appeared in AEW. He is now a member of the AEW roster. He got the graphic and everything later on from Tony Khan. They are not going with the Jake something moniker. They're going with his name, Jake Doyle, moving forward. It's going to take some getting used to, but look, I am very excited that AEW has picked up Jake something. If you are unfamiliar with his work, Jake something or Jake Doyle in this case, he's just a wrestler that you see less and less of in our modern age right now, as opposed to years ago where he'd be a template. He'd be a guy in 1987. Jake something would be pushed to the moon. He would be one of the biggest stars on earth. Nowadays, we look for something else in our pro wrestling stars, and but Jake something, Jake Doyle brings ruggedness and toughness and just an overall fierceness that you don't really get up and down a wrestling card anymore. Big, jacked, hairy guy, who you just look at and you're like, okay, this guy's an ass kicker. This guy is absolutely just gonna destroy anyone who gets in the ring with. And if he's paired up with Mark Davis, who has that same type of vibe, what this is going to do is I think it's also going to be extremely beneficial for Mark Davis. If they're just two guys, in black fucking wife beaters and jeans running around beating dudes up, I mean, that's essentially the role that Mark Davis has transitioned into since Aussie Open officially broke up, or at least unofficially, or at least quietly broke up. Now, it wasn't that quiet, come to think of it. No, listen, since Aussie Open doesn't exist anymore, Mark Davis has been looking for his spot. And maybe this is exactly the perfect spot for him, because Mark Davis is also one of these big, burly pro wrestlers who just likes to fuck people up. So if you got two guys of similar build who look kind of the same and you pair those two together, and that's what they do. Hell, I would even go as far as to say, strap these dudes up, have them kick the shit out of FTR and win the titles, and then just go on this maniacal run. Kind of like what a lot of us were hoping Tony Khan was going to do with Brian Cage and Lance Archer, moons ago, when they were a tag team. That was like, well, just have these monsters run through everyone on the roster. And then the benefit of that is that finally, when you get a tag team that you really believe in and that you want to put over to the fans, then you have that tag team beat these guys, kind of thing. I'm very excited about it. I'm mostly happy for Jake Doyle. I got it right this time. I'm terrible with these name changes. It's going to be hard. It's kind of like it. I think the Jake Doyle transition is going to be very similar to my Io Shirai, Io Sky transition, where I still to this day immediately default to Io Shirai. It doesn't sink in, and I think that it might take a while. I think it'll either take a while, or we're going to have the same situation here with Jake Doyle. Again, I'm doing it right. Jake something. But look, I'm very excited because, look, this is a guy who has been a regular in TNA. I think Impact TNA, I think for 8 years, right? And he's a guy that once under Scott D'Amore, they had plans and there was stuff that they wanted to do with him. Then unfortunately he got injured. He comes back, and then we're no longer in the Scott D'Amore era. Now we're into the Carlos Silva era, who just pees himself whenever an NXT guy or gal shows up, right? So we entered an era where, unfortunately, Jake something would be absolutely meaningless at this point. There would be no advantage to him still being around in TNA. He'd just be completely forgotten. And I'll tell you how. Look, you've got proof at how much that guy has been forgotten, because they being TNA released. They're doing graphics announcing their debut on AMC in a week. And on these graphics, they feature one TNA wrestler. Well, they released one with Jake something. And the question that I have is, why are you doing this if Jake something is, not renewing his contract or whatever? Why are you putting out this graphic with Jake something and then he shows up on a competitor's show? I mean, it's little TNA, don't get me wrong. Like TNA, whether or not TNA is on American movie classics or not, little TNA seems to be alive and well. But that just also goes to show like how much this guy was just like, I guess, forgotten. Like no one really thought about him seriously. It really was the best move. And then on top of that, he's a DPW regular. On top of that, well, he was a DPW regular. I mean, the spirit of Deadlock Pro might end up just living on in AEW, right? That we've got Jake something who's been picked up. You've got Adam Priest who's been signed a while back. You have Hyan who's in there as well. Queen Aminata was already part of the roster. You pick up people like I kick the tires on Kozone, quite frankly. I get my hands on Danny Luna. I try and get her out of the TNA cycle with WWE NXT. Those would be, and I think you really pick up like the heavy hitters, the top hitters then of Deadlock Pro, and I think that would be really, really excellent. They also have the grizzled young veterans. For as far as we know, they're signed. It's still very ambiguous, right? But you've got the grizzled young veterans there as well. There are too many talented people in DPW not to give a look and see what you could bring on to your side of things. Anyway, very excited for the Jake something signing. First match of the night was Jon Moxley versus Shelton Benjamin, who was accompanied by MVP but went on commentary because this is Continental Classic rules. So no seconds, no interferences, and all of this stuff, which suits Jon Moxley tremendously in this new era. And holy shit, this match ruled. This was an excellent match that went almost practically the full 20 minutes and was big, strong, beefy, rugged, brawling. It was so good. Like some bare bones, like people like to say, meat and potatoes pro wrestling. It wasn't fancy. There weren't frills. It was just like guys punching each other, slamming each other, Shelton Benjamin throwing the other guy around. And I have a new strategy for Jon Moxley, by the way. John, if you're listening, he's not. But you should listen to my strategy. Someone pass this on to John. Here's the new strategy. Stop fighting people who use ankle locks. John, that would be the thing. I think that would be a very good idea. I mean, it was a very heavy match, and it was right up my alley. I thought it was excellent, and what a fucking way to start off the show. Instead of, again, like this is something that the other guys cannot do. They can't start a Monday Night Raw with a match. Well, because multiple reasons. AEW can and should do this most weeks. I've said this before. I have no problem starting off a Dynamite with a promo if what you're setting up has such crucial implications for the rest of the proceedings, essentially. But if you're just starting off with a promo for the sake of the promo, then I'm like, this could have been a match, and it should be a match. AEW should continuously establish itself as being the place that the place where if you want action, you want a different flavor of pro wrestling. This is what we have to offer, as opposed to trying to do sports entertainment light, which unfortunately we're going to talk about a little later. Anyway, the struggle to win, for Mox to win this match was absolutely fantastic because Shelton hits the pay dirt, right? His finisher, and Mox kicks out of it. Mox lands the Death Rider. I think it's the Paradigm Shift, right? I think the Death Rider is the one where he lifts the guy up into the air, right? I believe. Feel free to correct me on that. But I think what he did here was a paradigm shift. Benjamin kicks out of that. And then Benjamin locks in a triangle, and he's got it in deep. And we're really into the last seconds. And the crowd is eating this shit up. The crowd is eating up this excellent pro wrestling storytelling match, right? Or storytelling within the match. They're eating it up. Go figure. Go figure that people who come to watch wrestling are into the wrestling. So we're at the last seconds. We got the triangle choke locked in, and Mox just sort of starts pushing up on his feet, and you can tell it's a struggle just to cradle Benjamin over so that he could lay his shoulders on the mat and get the 1, 2, 3. I fucking love the finish. And Mox wins, and they shake hands after, and it's all great. And pro wrestling rules, and Jon Moxley is great, and he's always been great. Just people decided that he wasn't when they were just wrong. We get a recap of the main event of Wrestle Kingdom, underscoring the retirement of Hiroshi Tanahashi, but also indicating that Kazuchika Okada was the guy who beat him in the main event. We get a hype package for Kenny Omega. He is going to be returning next week, which is good news. One of my sentiments for 2026, I got it right that time, it was for Kenny Omega to be on AEW more, to be more a part of the fabric of this company, as opposed to feeling like an outsider, which was always weird. We talked about this last year, and now, well, this is a smart thing. And even if even if Max just beats him, which will probably be the case, this is the kind of use you should be putting Kenny Omega. This is the kind of use you should be getting out of Kenny Omega. Not necessarily putting over guys because he's on his last legs. That's not what I'm saying. But being a main event player, being in the main event scene, that's what he's for. Next up, Jungle Jack Perry shows up to fight the Demand in the 6-man trios match that they had. And his partners turned out to be the Young Bucks, who are not that injured after all, turns out. And this was absolutely fantastic. Just a tremendous, fun as hell party match that had everyone shining. And Jungle Jack Perry, since they decided to pull him as a babyface again, I think has been a sincerely refreshing change. I think his natural babyface presence and his I've talked about it again, but again, I've talked about it previously, but I'm going to talk about it again. His explosive babyface energy and that natural good guy presence that he has really does suit him. And I think it is clear that the heel turn did him more damage in the eyes of wrestling fans overall than the opposite. I think you had to try. Don't get me wrong. I think you had to try, but I probably would have come around sooner on it than what they did, because it really did turn out to just hurt him more than anything else. But this was so much fun. This was a blast of a match, and the Bucks are so good. The Bucks are still so incredibly excellent and creative, and again, like match after match, continuing to cement that they probably are the greatest tag team of all time. Just because of if only because of the level of work that they have sustained for so long, uninterrupted. Like there has never been a Young Bucks split. They've completely avoided these types of tropes. Just a fantastic match. Anyway, a fantastic match. And you even had Toa Leone, right, doing this. Leona. What did I say, Leone? Tola Leona doing this Samoan drop with all three baby faces on his shoulders. I got a huge pop from the crowd. Ricochet is so good in this as well. It is crazy to believe that this guy was so utterly wasted. And we're entering like over a year at this point, right? Since the jump, I don't quite remember when he jumped, or approaching anyway. I don't quite remember, but despite all the time that he has been in AEW, despite all this time that has elapsed, is what I'm trying to say, I still think back at his WWE run and how completely useless he was. And not because he couldn't do it, and not because, Ricochet can't promo and so on and so forth. It's because he was just never given the chance. It's because they just didn't care. They didn't like him. They didn't see anything out of him. Anyway, the Young Bucks hit the BTE trigger, and then Jack Perry does his running knee gimmick to get the win, to get the pin on Ricochet. So that will likely set up a national championship title shot. After the match, Jake Doyle and Mark Davis show up and attack the Young Bucks. And I'm already rubbing my hands together and going, yummy. Now, this is going to be fun, fellows. Then the Gates of Agony take down Jack Perry, and Jet Speed sort of hobble out for the save. And they've got hockey sticks wrapped in barbed wire to sort of even the odds. And then the lights go out, and then Andrade makes his dramatic re-debut. And then FTR show up at the top of the ramp with Stokely in a wheelchair, and they just stare everybody down. So lots of stuff going on here, but look, as I said, Doyle and Davis versus the Bucks is, this is the kind of stuff that I'm immediately interested in. And then Andrade showing up, it was just a matter of time, right? And I don't know why wrestling fans were truly wondering if Andrade was going to return. Unless you're not plugged into the internet, I don't know why you'd be wondering that, especially since at Wrestle Kingdom he came out to his AEW music, and the in-ring announcer introduced him as being from AEW. Oh, he's back. It They just needed to settle the paperwork amongst lawyers. That's all they really needed to do, and they did. So I don't know. It was just a question of time. It was a question of when. So they decided to do it in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Anyway, this was an excellent match, long match that culminated, I think, an excellent first hour of AEW Dynamite. Truly, truly excellent. Just focused on everything that they do best with their top stars in there. Look, they're practically flawless. I've got not much to critique. Hour 2 is a different story though, because they decide to go with the Willow Nightingale Championship celebration, which is, of course, the most WWE coded thing ever. She's in the ring with Renee Paquette to sort of drive the interview, but she's also flanked by Harley Cameron and Chris Statlander, and apparently they've made up now. They're super good pals again. That's a little bit of a shame because I think they could have built to that a little better. They really could have. I don't know. They could have just they could have continued to create the tension, the will they, won't they, over the last month or so. But I don't know. Maybe I'm asking too much from my storytelling. But I feel like this was just dropped on us, and it's I know Statlander showed up after the win last week and hugged her, and I just would have liked to see on television. I would have liked to see this evolve a little bit. So they're doing the championship celebration thing. There's a cake. So you know what's going to happen here. Willow calls out Mercedes Moné to come join them. She wants to let bygones be bygones. She says she wants everyone to move on because you're a great wrestler and whatnot. Mercedes comes in dressed in white and in this she has the goofiest mourning hat with the veil and everything. And I'm laughing so hard at what I'm seeing. She takes off the hat and she's having a mental breakdown. She is not doing well. She starts trashing everything. Statlander saves the cake. So again, you know what's coming up. Willow gets tripped. Not Willow, excuse me. Mercedes gets tripped face first into the cake. Oh no. And then Willow Nightingale lands the babe with the power bomb onto the cake as well. I got this was a bit of a come down for me. It was a come down, and don't get me wrong. I love Willow Nightingale, and I'll be the first to say that it was about goddamn time that they did with something. But these types of segments are so. These are the types of segments that I feel AEW should not be doing because they don't do them better than the other guys. They are exactly like the other guys. They're corny and they're lame and I think they just end up being rote, a little hackneyed, and they should be better than this. They should, it's the kind of thing they should not be doing, especially when it ends with facefuls of cake, which isn't. Didn't Mercedes? She was in another cake segment last fall, right? I can't remember to the lead into what, but I got no use for this, and it's unfortunate because it kind of and it was at the 9 o'clock hour too. It was in the second big quarter hour of the show, and you're putting Willow front and center, and this is what you do with her. I'm like, missed opportunity. I think. You know what I would have done? Have her fight a local talent, then have her cut a promo just like she and Harley did after they won the tag team titles, they won the tournament, and have Willow cut an exhausted promo, or not exhausted, but a little out of breath after the match, and then do the thing with Mercedes. But you don't need cake. And if you have to bring in Statlander, because I think now what we're setting up is Mercedes Moné and Chris Statlander. I think that's what we might be setting up. Well, so if you need Statlander in there to set that up, well, you could just have her come in to stick up for her friend, and then Mercedes taking umbrage to it. It's so much better than this goofy shit. It would have been just maybe too basic in the minds of some people, but I think it would have been better than using not old wrestling tropes, WWE tropes. These are not professional wrestling tropes. These are WWE tropes. So you don't have to do what the other guys are doing. The Triangle of Madness cut a promo backstage. They're talking about Chris Statlander, and it's like, hey, bring some of your friends and come and fight all of us. Or I believe we're getting a trios match between Statlander, Harley, and Willow next week against the Triangle of Madness. And oh boy, Sammy Guevara gets a little pre-tape promo. I think it was a pre-tape. He must be excited to be back on Dynamite, and that leads to Bandito versus defeating Sammy Guevara in a really good match. As much as I couldn't give a single care about Sammy Guevara in AEW in 2025, 2026, he was really good here. He was very, very good. And he did some incredible stuff. Like you could tell, like probably for him, this was like his audition to get back onto the main show, into the big leagues instead of hanging around Ring of Honor, right? He's a pillar of AEW after all, but he was really good. And I think like getting his nose busted, mid-match, I think that also helped. But I mean, his shooting star press to the floor was just that, it's ridiculous Sammy bullshit, but it's incredibly impressive nonetheless. And the way that he avoided the 21 plex twice, I was like, oh, okay, this is actually really, really creative and fun. Yeah, like he counters one of the two 21 plexes just by landing on his feet, right? When he, instead of eating the German, he lands on his feet. And another one, he just counters it with a cutter, which I thought was fantastic. So yeah, I mean, he was very good, and Bandito wins he eventually does win with the 21 plex, and that's the end of that. I mean, look, I'm not sitting here stating I want Sammy Guevara to be back on AEW TV. That's, neither here nor there. But I am saying he was really good in this match. And so was Bandito. Bandito was very solid here. And then after the match, well, MJF shows up. He had been advertised to be there. And he's got John Cruz along with him. For those of you who maybe don't know exactly what the relation is, John Cruz would accompany MJF to CMLL when MJF was champion and was doing a little more stuff, in his feud with Mystico over there. And he would have John Cruz essentially translate his promos for him. That was the gimmick. And John Cruz even put on a stovepipe hat, dressed up in black and kind of looked like Abraham Lincoln. I think that was also part of the joke. But he didn't hear, and MJF claims to be a Lucha Libre legend, which was, just classic Max here. And, he basically offers Bandito the opportunity to skip the match next week and making him all sorts of deals, particularly in regards to the Dynamite Diamond Rings, that's why that Bandito won. He says, why don't you give me that? Because it belongs to me and whatnot. Bandito doesn't have anything to do with that, and he sort of confronts MJF in English on top of that. MJF low blows. Bandito then takes the Dynamite Diamond Ring, but Bandito recovers, reclaims the ring, low blows MJF as well, and hits the 21 plex on both Cruz and MJF. And MJF was in the fucking 21 plex position for what felt like an age. Oh my God. Anyway, I promised myself today I was not going to rant on the 21 plex, and I'm not. It'll be for another occasion. So we're getting the match next week. Bandito, MJF, that's all happening next week on Dynamite. A fine little segment, good little promo. It's funny how no one is hopping online to say MJF did a good job. No, they're keeping that energy when he does stuff that he doesn't like. We get a hype package for Brody King. So off of the squash last week, this week we're getting the hype package, and I'm pumping my fist. I'm going, hell yeah, let's go Brody King push. We're getting the Brody King push, which is something that I've been excited for a long, long time. Tony Storm defeats Marina Shafir via disqualification in their one-on-one match here. This was okay. It was a good little match. Marina didn't stink as much as I thought she was. Like, I'm not a fan of Marina Shafir's in-ring work. I think her role as, you know, this silent assassin heater type in the Death Riders is absolutely perfect, and I have no issues with it at all. But Marina's in-ring has always been a bit of an issue for her. It's always been a little problematic, and I was happy to see that it wasn't that big of an issue here. It was actually a pretty good match. I'm not gonna, sit here and tell you it was the greatest thing of all time. It was fine. And then the win comes when Wheeler Yuta pulls the referee out of the ring, Paul Turner, and Paul Turner, instead of like falling flat on his face or whatever, just like, what the hell did you do? And he calls the DQ. Now, this sets a precedent. I am happy about this because I don't know why referees hadn't been doing this before, calling for a disqualification when they get dragged out of the ring, or when people put their hands on them anyway. Now this sets a precedent, because if we start seeing this thing again, where if we start seeing more and more of these pull the ref out situations, pull the ref out of the ring while he's counting thing, and the refs don't call the DQs, I'm sort of going to call bullshit. Because this was significant nonetheless. I think it's a significant message that's being put out there. Anyway, after the match, Marina Shafir continues to attack Toni Storm. Mina makes the save, along with Luther, Roderick Strong, Orange Cassidy. You've got the rest of the Death Riders who are there. Well, all except Pac. Claudio Castagnoli is there, and Claudio is bad-mouthing Rod Strong, and Orange Cassidy embraces both Tony and Mina, and I guess everything is cool now. Oh, I forgot to mention earlier in the evening, I forgot to pull this up. We saw Darby Allin in the building skateboarding, and basically saying he's looking for Pac, and now he eventually finds Pac, who's having a backstage interview, and he is doing the most basic pro wrestling move here, where he's like, Darby Allin wants a match with me? I've beat him twice. Darby Allin has beaten me 0 times. He's in the past. I don't have to give him anything. I am on top here. I'm like, yes, this makes sense. This makes absolute sense. Darby shows up, starts requesting the match. And I'm like, no, Darby, you have no legs to stand on here. And then he sort of drags Pac into the doorway and threatens to break his ankle. And then Pac agrees then to the match because he doesn't want his ankle broken. And then the rest of the Death Riders arrive. So there you go. We're going to get Pac versus Darby Allin, which is, always a good time. Don't get me wrong. It's just Pac was absolutely right. And then we had the unsanctioned Lights Out match. By the way, AEW they really had a lot of trouble with the electricity during the show, right? They did the Lights Out thing for Andrade, right? But then the lights gave out during Willow's celebration, and then they had to use like the spotlights, and then the lights gave out during the Lights Out gimmick. During the match itself, they did turn the lights out and turn them back on, to indicate, oh, it's unsanctioned. The whole lighting apparatus went out again, and they were back to using the spotlights. And this was to a point where I was like, is AEW struggling with their electricity? Is production struggling with the electrical on this show? Or did AEW really want to do a Lights Out match with the spotlights? And the fact that all the lights returned at some point during the Lights Out match proved to me, no, they were indeed struggling with the electrical, and it wasn't great. But this was good. It was a good match. We've seen much more violent matches, Lights Out matches than this. I was surprised there wasn't any blood. I'm assuming maybe, the athletic commission probably bans this, because there was only accidental blood on the show, but no one getting cut open or whatever. Look, the match went the way I felt it should, with the 2 top guys of the company just at some point playing with their food, right? At some point they're just looking at each other. They're smiling. They don't see the threat. And they shouldn't see the threat with two guys who are completely on another, that are completely on another level than them, another lane within the company. So, Hobbs and Hook did put up a fight. It wasn't a squash by any means. It was a standard wrestling match. But, when Paige and Swerve were in control, they were absolutely 100% dominant, and it showed in their attitude, it showed in their confidence, and that's how it should have been. And, they tried for some big spots. They did the cinder blocks thing, which was fine, and Prince Nana throws some hot coffee, and, it was all right. Like, I felt like this was, as far as AEW goes, and the expectations that you have when it comes to a lights out match, this was more of a PG rated version than something that we're typically used to when it comes to these lights out matches, if that makes sense. So, it was all right. It was okay for what it was. I'm not shitting on it, but it's not going to be anything memorable. It's not going to be anything that you'll be able to remember for the rest of your life. It's not going to make the big final moments of 2026, in any reel this year. They win when Hangman chokes Hook with the chain over the top rope, which is Hangman's, secondary finisher. Really, it's like, this is. I like that he goes back to it in these circumstances where he's like, oh, I can choke a brother out. Excellent. Let's do it. And I appreciate it. Now, I've been saying for a couple of weeks now that I find that Hangman and Swerve are okay, but they are much more interesting when they are at odds with each other. When there is that anger, that feud that exists between them. I am putting my foot down now and saying that Hangman and Swerve being friends has officially run its course. From this point on, if they continue doing the exact same thing that they're doing, I will officially lose interest. I don't think it's all that compelling right now. And last night, I was kind of hoping that Swerve was going to take the opportunity of this match to, turn on Hangman, to just like tell him to fuck off or whatever, just like beat him up on the cinder blocks. I was kind of expecting that. Now, not that they have to turn on each other, but I think we need them. I think they are much more interesting as separate entities, disliking each other heavily, than being buddy, I respect you, common enemies and whatnot. I think it's run its course. I think it's getting kind of boring. It's getting kind of stale. So if we're I'm in the exact same spot next week, I'm going to continue complaining about it, just to forewarn you. These guys should, at this point, be doing much more interesting things than just fighting off the B team. And I know this is a setup for Samoa Joe. I understand. I hope the tension becomes who gets to fight Samoa Joe between the two of them. I should take him, so on and so forth. I hope this becomes the crux of the. I hope that they split up again, and I hope that they become at odds with each other again. That's what I'm hoping for. Or for something completely unexpected to happen where I slap my hands together and I'm like, this is exactly what this duo needed. It's a little stale. That's all. I'm not saying it's bad, it's terrible. I'm saying it's stale now. It's run its course. Now we got to cycle through something new. In your boy's humble opinion, you can absolutely have a different opinion, and you're more than welcome to. Just like you're more than welcome to leave a like on this video if you're watching on YouTube, or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or a 5-star rating on Spotify, because we are done for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I will be back later today on Thursday. If you're listening to this on Thursday, I will be back with a live stream here on the YouTube channel. And, Mr. Warren Hayes Show back next Wednesday as well. So, in the meantime, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, an excellent weekend. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll see you next time.